three children. I have Kiana, Larry, and LaRon. Kiana's 18, Larry's 14, and LaRon is 9. I lost my children due to substance abuse. The day I lost my children, I remember the social worker asking me to drug test. And I had 24 hours to drug test. And I knew that my test was going to be positive. And I wouldn't test anyway. So the social worker came out about 4 days later and told me she would remove my children from the home. She gave me time to pack. She gave me the time that she was coming. She asked me did I want them to be removed from home or school. And I said home. So I remember once my kids got out of school, packing my children up. I wasn't offered any help, but to go to treatment and not even a resource to what treatment to go to. I was so hurt about my children being taken away. I wasn't focused. And that's when I fell harder into my addiction. I got incarcerated. I remember the day I went to jail. I remember walking the streets with nowhere to go. And I had hit my rock bottom. And I knew it was going to be either jail or death. I wasn't planning on staying sober, but I was able to go to jail and sober up. And in jail, I was able to dry out while I was incarcerated. My kids were all together before I got incarcerated, and I was happy with that because I had to be a foster mother. My youngest had started having behavior problems. And I knew why he was acting out, and they had split my kids up. And they was going to adopt my children out. And I was afraid of that. And I remember at night, I remember some days, I'd be laying down and I'd wake up crying because I just felt like I felt my baby in my heart. I knew he wasn't okay. And so when I got out, I went to treatment. In treatment, I was able to heal. They still haven't even hypnotized on said granny. It actually took me 3 to 4 years to be ready. I had went to treatment, but I was just going because they wanted me to. I wasn't going because I was ready. And I remember I had them medically discharged me from treatment. So this last time around, 21 months ago, I had to do treatment. I had to do aftercare. And I had to find a safe haven for them to come to. I also had to do therapy. I had to do so many meetings a week and a month. So once I came to a new way of life, which was January 13th, 2020, that's when I was able to have overnight visits with my children. And now, within this 21-month process, they only go home once a month until the case is closed. When you don't have any support, you don't have any resources, you don't know which way to go. A new way of life is based on reuniting families. I think it's tailor-made to reuniting families because of all the resources. This Mother's Day, I feel like I really appreciate it. The last 4 years, Mother's Day, I didn't feel like I deserved Mother's Day. This Mother's Day, I can honestly sit back, put my feet up, and enjoy Mother's Day. The message. message that I want to put out there for formerly incarcerated. If you want to get out, you have to mothers and men that are fighting to reunite with their children it's a hell of a fight, but it's worth it. Don't give up. My name is Latanya, and I testify because there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Peace and Justice Summit on Family Wellness presented by ANWOL. My name is Kiana Roberts, and my colleague Michael Toller and I are co-directors of ANWOL. So, our founder and president, Ms. Susan Bird, is regretfully unable to be here with us today. On Monday afternoon, she was in a car accident. She's well, she's home, she's safe, she's recovering, and she's watching us here today virtually. On behalf of Susan, we would like to extend her appreciation to everyone here today for being with us.
A New Way of Life was established in 1998 by Susan after returning home from her 6th prison term. A friend steered her to Clare College in San Juan. And after going through the treatment at Clare, she wondered why there was nothing like that in South LA. Why the resources weren't available in her community, and made it her goal to bring similar resources to South LA. Since then, we've grown to a nationally acclaimed reentry program for women. In our 23 years, we have provided housing to over 1,200 formerly incarcerated women. We've helped reunite more than 400 women with their children. And we provide also, among other things, we provide pro bono legal services to more than 3,400 community members with conviction histories. In conjunction with with some county partners, we've partnered with various agencies over the years, and we have been checking up reentry since 1998.
Susan's vision is why we're all here today. You know, Susan believes that every person inherits value. She believes that every woman that goes to prison, their kids also serve the time with them. This is why healing and the reentry process must include the entire family. Family separation and termination of parental rights. It's a barrier to reentry, it's a barrier to family, and it's a barrier to community building. Today's summit will include presentations by individuals most affected by the barriers of reentry, and also community building. As well as presentations by political leaders and legal and academic experts. To begin, I'd like to introduce Father Perry, who is the director of the DePaul Center at Montebello, and followed by Father Perry, we will hear a poem by ANWOL Life community organizers, Stephanie Jeffco and Kimberly Dunn.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Father Perry Henry, and as mentioned
mentioned, I'm the director at the Paul Evangelization Center in Montebello. I'm very happy to be here with you today. But I'm going to start off by saying I have some regrets as well today. I intended to be here with you the whole day, but I'm dealing with kind of a medical crisis issue at home. One of our Vincentian priest brothers has diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He's in hospice care. So they just transferred him back home, and I'm trying to get some things organized for him. So I won't be able to be here with you the whole day. But I do appreciate this opportunity to be here with you this morning. I'd like to begin with a prayer. I'd like to start with a reading from the Gospel of St. Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, "Everyone who listens to these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. The rain fell, the floods came, the wind blew and buffeted the house, but it didn't collapse. It had been set solidly on rock. And everyone who listens to these words of mine but does not act on them will be like the fool who built his house on sand. The rain fell, the floods came, the wind blew and buffeted the house, and it collapsed and was completely ruined." And when Jesus finished these words, the crowds were astonished at his teaching. Today in the gospel, Jesus is talking about building a house on rock, a solid foundation. And we know that keeping families united is a solid foundation for our communities. So today we come together and we ask God to be with us as we look at creating a vision for our communities that support that solid foundation for the families themselves, but in doing so for our families as well. So I invite us, let us pray. Blessed are you, Lord God, creator of heaven and earth and all they contain. In the Passover of the Old Testament, you kept unharmed the houses of your people that were sprinkled with the blood of the Lamb. Your fatherly tenderness never ceases to provide for us in our need. Grant us wisdom and courage as we strive today to forge a vision of reunification for families in our communities that have experienced upheaval and separation. And with the gift of your grace, fill us with your hope. Sanctify us so that, faithful to your commandments, we will care for each other, ennoble this world by our lives, and reach the home you have prepared for all people in your kingdom. This we humbly ask in your name. Amen. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Father Perry. I'm going to introduce Jeffco.
Broken minds, broken lives, broken hearts is what happens when you tear families apart. Parenting, anger management, substance abuse. All these classes end for what? What's the use? Only in the end to be told we have no parental rights. Filing motion after motion, putting up a fight. They say they want what's best for the child, yet still they take our kids, leaving us feeling so defiled.
They think putting them with strangers is for the best.
Well, they order us to go a few times a week to go test. Family separation has become the new norm, leaving families out with no umbrellas in the middle of the storm. How many tears must we cry? How many years must I last before we get the chance to stop living in a trance, or to see our kids again, even the opportunity just to have plans?
The child welfare system has been stealing our kids for years, causing heartbreak, despair, countless nights, shedding tears.
It's time for us to come together to fight against the system. No longer will we sit around and play victim. This is our season. It's our time to thrive. Time to shine bright. Time to come alive. Time to stop the cruel punishment for brown and black lives. This fight is long and hard, but we're in it to win. And we won't ever stop fighting until we see our children again.
Thank you, Father Perry, Stephanie Jeffco, and Kimberly Dunn. We would now like to introduce Senator Sidney Kamlager. Senator Kamlager was elected to the California State Senate in March of 2021 and has spent her career prioritizing equity and access for Californians. Please join us in welcoming the Senator.
Thank you and good morning. How are you all this morning? Okay, come on now. That was dry. How are you this morning? There we go. Well, welcome. I first want to give honor to LaTanya and her story. I think that was a really important way to center us in these discussions that we are going to be having. I want to thank all of you all for coming out to this conference. It is the brainchild of Susan Burton. I will say Emmy, but you know, if you all know Susan Burton, you know she calls and she says, "Okay, Senator, we need to do this. Are you with me?" Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. My staff is like, "Well, Susan wants to do." I said, "Just say yes. Just say yes." So I also want us to send some prayers to Susan for a speedy recovery. If you can imagine, she actually called and said, got into a situation, but we're still doing this. And now you have to represent me too. So, okay, the pressure. But she said, do it for me, represent. So, okay, so we know that she is not here in body, but she is certainly here in spirit. And her spirit is strong and resilient and committed to this issue of women who are impacted by the system, women who have been incarcerated, women who come out and still find themselves invisible or stigmatized or stereotyped by systems. And really, all of us are part of those systems. And so this conference is about how do we each use our practice and experience in our lanes and across lanes to make systems better. Because at the end of the day, systems are people. And we come to it with our biases, with our stereotypes, with the tropes that have been calcified because they have been replicated and reinforced time and time again. Our own personal stories and narratives, we bring all of that to the table. And if we've got a bad day, chances are that client is going to have a bad day because we have put all of our own angst into a system that we know is vulnerable to those kinds of feelings. Sometimes those kinds of resentments, certainly those kinds of fears. Everyone comes from a place. And so I am here, Senator Bradford is here, Assembly Member Isaac Bryan is here, Supervisor Holly Mitchell is here. We are here because we care about these families. Now, personally, I care because I have one. I have a husband, I have some kids. They are all my color. And we've certainly had some run-ins. And even with my nice little outfit, when somebody rolls up to my car or knocks on my door, they don't see any title. They don't see any of that. So I've been touched. And this amazing poem that we just heard affirms the fact that we have systems in place that condone a sense of patronizing behaviors that are levied against us. And we have to work to circumcise those behaviors out of these systems that we need to work for us. Families have all kinds of issues. There might be domestic violence, there might be mental health issues, there might be substance abuse, there might be issues with incarceration, there might be baby mom and daddy dramas. All of that is like happening in every family, okay? But why is it disproportionately that our families end up in the system? LA County is the largest dependency system in the world. In the world. And we know that if one of us is in contact with law enforcement, the court, a judge, a jail, a prison, probation, parole, it is highly likely that our children will be snatched because someone is levying their own idea of what our household should look like. And so how does government, as big as it is, attack this problem in a way that is customized, that is individualized, that addresses each family and their needs? We bucketed homelessness, and look where we are. Nowhere. Tens and thousands of folks on the street. So we've got to take a pause on that. And that's why Susan brought us all together. We are going to hear from people sharing their stories. There's going to be some testimonies. There's going to be some snapping of some fingers. People are going to be connecting. And then we have to discuss solutions. We have to acknowledge where we are falling short. Do we need as many mandated reporters as we have? I mean, are these people properly trained? There was a bill this year that said even teenagers should be trained to be mandated reporters. I was curious. I had to raise my hand in committee and ask some questions. Is that what we want? We should be looking at what neglect means and how it is applied and defined in code and then in practice. We should be asking ourselves, do we need more training in disability classes so you can get your certificate? It don't mean you get your kids back. So what are we training for? For you to be like me? Well, you don't live in my household. You don't know what I'm dealing with. So this is an opportunity. Susan wants this to be an opportunity for us to talk about how the systems really work and how they don't, so that we can fix them in practice at the county level and in code at the state level. And I'm going to say one more thing. Ultimately, this is about love. And how do we work to learn healthier ways to love ourselves? Because real talk, we call in the police on ourselves. I'm mad. Something ain't go right. I didn't get my check. I saw you with somebody else. Something happened. And I call on you because I know how the system sees you. And I'm going to use those biases against you. I'm going to weaponize So we have a responsibility to talk about that because we have an obligation to de-weaponize these systems because they are churning and burning against us. It's like a Pac-Man getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I see warriors here. Judge Espinosa is here. He was with me on the penal code for business. I mean, brother is no joke. And he knows what happens in the courts. I mentioned our assembly member and our supervisor and our other senator who will be coming. They have worked on laws. They have seen how things get implemented. We have a warrior in the county now, the Supervisor Mitchell, who has been on the front end in terms of helping to write laws, on the back end in terms of implementing them and seeing how they don't work. Department of Social Services is here, DCFS is here. I mean, everyone is here. Thank you, Susan Burton. And so let's use this time to have honest and real discussions about what is happening to us and how we work collectively in small ways that will create larger changes to these systems because they, at the end of the day, have to work more fairly and equitably for all of us. And I'm repeatedly calling out their names because I want you to know that you have allies in the state legislature. Last I checked, all of us have, Black families, and parents, and guardians. And last I checked, all of us are committed to our community, to our Black community, our brown and Asian and indigenous community, our LGBTQ community, our children. We are committed to all of that with your help. So thank you so much for allowing me to say some words. And Susan, if you're watching virtually, I hope I did you some justice, sister. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. In the spirit of Susan, I know she's at home saying, "You go, girl." Yeah, thank you for that. So our next section features a panel of speakers whose experiences and experts speaks directly to the harm and trauma caused by family separation policies. These speakers are Stephanie Jeffco, Kimberly Dunn, Diane Figueroa, Fidel Chapoya, Vanessa Soto, Kiana Roberts, Talita Gloria, and Andy Mazingo. Please join me in welcoming them.
So hello again. As y'all know, my name is Stephanie Jeffco, and I'm a community organizer for a New Way of Life Reentry project. Because I grew up in Orange County, many people think that I must have came from money and that my childhood must have been perfect. Unfortunately, that's not my story. I grew up in a household with a single mom who struggled with addiction, and this environment played a crucial role in the life choices that I made. By the age of 13, I had already started smoking, drinking, and became sexually active. By the age of 15, I was living on my own. By the age of 17, I was a teen mom. While other students were graduating from their senior year in high school, I was at home taking care of a baby that was born 15 weeks early. For over 19 years, I struggled with addiction and cycled in and out of incarceration. I became homeless, lost my children, and even was the victim of a sexual assault. As a result of that, I became pregnant. At that time, I was homeless and sleeping in my car, still suffered from substance misuse, and didn't have a family that I could turn to. When I started having contractions, I was scared to go to the hospital. I knew that there was a chance that I might not be with my beautiful baby girl. After delivery, Child Protective Services came into my room and told me that they would be taking my daughter into their custody. They immediately took her from my arms and told me if I wanted to see her, I would have to go to the nursery and visit her, supervised. I broke down. The thought of leaving the hospital without my baby girl was devastating. The reality was even worse. Imagine giving birth to your child and immediately being separated. Imagine your child walking, missing your child walking for the first time, their first words, their first day of kindergarten. Imagine not being able to spend any holidays or birthdays with your child. Most of all, imagine never even being able to see a picture of your child. My daughter is 5 years old, and she could walk past me right now, and I wouldn't even know it was her. All I can do is imagine. After our separation, I fell deeper into my addiction and ended up going back to jail. After my release, I went into Children and Family Services to see if I could set up my court-ordered visits with my daughter again. They told me to leave my name and number, and if my case was still open, they would get back to me. They never did it, and at that time, I still had my parental rights. I never received a call back, and I didn't have anyone to help me navigate the system. I didn't know that I could stay in that office and demand to speak to a social worker or a supervisor. During my last time of incarceration, which was only 6 months, my daughter was adopted out. It took them 3 months to finalize the adoption. I was never served any paperwork, nor was I notified of any court dates. I was never given the opportunity to fight for my daughter, and that lack of representation by my attorney cost me my daughter. My daughter has not been given the chance to know her biological mother. While I agree that children shouldn't be kept lingering in foster care, we also must look at how family separation plays a big part in the trauma that these children face. I never want my daughter to think that she wasn't loved or wanted. She's not only separated from me, but from the rest of her family as well. My daughter Harmony has 2 brothers and a sister that she has never even met. My girl's birthdays are 6 days apart. Whenever my daughter Kamira's birthday comes, which is on June 1st, she is instantly reminded that her baby sister's birthday, who is on June 7th, won't be with us that year. She wants to be able to know and see her baby sister. For 3 years, I filed motion after motion, only to be denied. The courts told me that since I didn't have any parental rights, that I was not entitled to any of my court documents. 2 months ago, from the help of a few excellent attorneys, Andrea Pazico being one of them from a New Way of Life Reentry project, I have finally received my court documents. Obtaining these documents has allowed us to make contact with the adoptive parents in hopes that they will allow me to have a relationship with my daughter. She deserves the chance to know the woman that I am today. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her. Being separated from her and losing my parental rights has been the most difficult trial that I've ever faced in my life. I can't imagine having to spend the next 13 years without her, and my hopes are that I won't have to. With the support of organizations like A New Way of Life, I have been able to take ownership of my own life again. My position here has given me the opportunity to meet with policymakers to help change these harmful policies that promote family separation. Today I am sober, have a full-time job, a place of my own, will be graduating with 5 associate degrees next year, and have my other children back in my life. I have chosen to go to law school to help parents who have dealt with family separation like I have. My goal is to help as many parents as I can not have to endure the same pain that I have these last 5 years. It's important that advocates like myself work to dismantle a system built upon family separation and strive to create a system where the right to parent is supported, accepted, and recognized. Thank you very much for your time.
become homeless and struggle to survive. Much like my mother, I am the second generation of trying to navigate the life of a poor woman of color. At a point, I lost the struggle and became homeless, which led to suicide. So much happened that it seemed out of my control. I had my first child at 23. I tried to provide. I tried to be a good mother. I wanted to be a good mother, but I needed help. My son was 6 months old when I lost custody. That was one of the most difficult days of my life. I fell into a deep depression that I medicated with drugs to not feel the pain inside. Eventually, this led me into a cycle of incarceration. Soon after I gave birth to my second child, Nigel, at the age of 25, my daughter was 17 days old when she was taken. Through this time, I continued to self-medicate. I'm here to say that my whole life has been a challenging cycle of insanity. I'm here to say, even at my lowest moments, there wasn't a time I didn't think about my children. Today, I'm here to ask what happens now. How can we make a change for parents just like me? I remember being at one of my lowest moments, and the only thing I could think about was Ira and Nigel. My ultimate goal in life is to find a way to be a part of their lives. I have a lot of questions, but one question is, can you help me change the system? A judged child and incarcerated person may have a second chance at life. Can you help me have that chance to be a part of my kids' life? Can you help me be in their lives? Can you help me have a chance to hug and kiss them? I come from a background of substance misuse and incarceration to a woman who asked for help and has completed an inpatient and outpatient treatment and a sober living program. Today, I'm a woman who earns her child's touch and smell. I don't make excuses for the choices I have made. Can you help us change the system for parents just like me? I lost my children in 6 months due to incarceration. The recommendation never changed. My kids are free for adoption. I put in a request to be considered, only to be denied time after time. Is there a change that we can make to be heard? Can we work together to make this change? As hard as it's been, I'm still hopeful. I miss my kids every day, every holiday, every birthday, every milestone. I miss them. Today, I live a whole new way of life. I'm a fellow at New Way of Life, and as a result of working with this organization, a fire has sparked inside me. A New Way of Life advocates for parents just like me, and I have the privilege to be here. If you don't take anything from this, take this. Today I'm here. I know my kids have a bond with their adopted parents, but I am their mother, and I will never lose hope that one day we will be reunited. Today, everything I do is for them. Thank you. Childhood years, childhood tears. With torn clothes and torn shoes on my feet, and no money to eat. I went to the system with the assumption that things will get better. Yeah, whatever. They took me away from home, but for my mother, I was born. My name is Diana Figueroa. I'm here to help make a change in this broken system. This poem was very difficult to write because of my severe mental diagnosis, which include PTSD, depression, and multiple suicidal attempts. I have developed all these mental diagnoses
due to being caught in this vicious cycle of mental, sexual, and physical abuse, all of which I endured while being involved in the justice system. I write this poem for the harm my daughter suffered while being forced to rely on a dysfunctional child welfare system. I write this poem to help stop the cycle of abuse on any parent or child caught up in this web of life that labels us as bad parents or bad children. Hope Reborn, a poem. In their care, I was abused, and that's why I picked up my news. I just wanted to go back home. I didn't want to be alone. I ran away and hid my face from night and day. The streets were my only way. If only they would have helped my mother to dress and feed me, my sister and brother. They were supposed to make things better. But when I seen that day was never. On this day, I choose to fight, to shine the light and make things right, to keep families together and help them with whatever. Separation from my mother is where she lost her daughter. And because of that, I felt like my life didn't matter. Today, with the help of organizations like the New Way of Life, my life is filled with hopes and dreams. They have given me a chance to work as a community organizer and tell my story, this story. Now I have a million reasons to live and fight for justice and save others from this broken system. Thank you, and may God bless all your families.
Hello everyone, my name is Kiana, and my incarceration does not define me, nor does it prove that. I am capable of being a father. At the age of 17, I became a wardless state and served a total of 16 years incarcerated as a juvenile throughout my young adolescence. When my daughter Zoe was born in September 2016, my daughter's mom tested positive for opiates because the doctor prescribed her Tylenol with codeine for a toothache, and because of this positive test, she was referred to the San Bernardino Children and Family Services. Not knowing and understanding what CFS was, I had many questions. I was getting limited answers. At the time, my daughter's mom had other children in the system. My first child was her age. In November, we were told that we had court but never received any court order documents stating that there was a court hearing. I had many questions, and nobody had any answers. I did not go to the first court hearing because of not receiving any court documents, and the social worker got a warrant from the judge the same day of not showing up for court when my daughter was taken in November 2016. Because of having violent felonies as a juvenile that at the time were 21 years old, and my daughter's mom already had been involved with CFS, my daughter was placed on fast-track adoption. She was with the adoptive family within 6 months. Not knowing what to do, I sought legal counsel that cost $15,000. I thought seeking legal counsel would help in getting my daughter back. My attorney instructed me not to communicate with CFS, and if they had any questions, to contact my attorney. I did as instructed, and was seen as being uncooperative. My parental rights were terminated in 2017, and my daughter Zoe was officially adopted out with 119 other children on November 21st, 2019. After my parental rights were terminated, my mother was still able to continue a relationship with the adopted family, so my mother was able to visit my daughter at the Unit Center Mall. And what I used to do is I used to go stand and see her and watch my daughter from class. Because I wanted to see completed all the programs or certificates that were required of me. I went back to school. I went to Riverside City College. I got 2 associate's degrees. I got a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of California, Riverside, and I'm a grad student at the University of Redlands. Today I'm able to see my daughter once a month, but it still feels like there's a glass in front of me because now there's language barriers. My daughter speaks Spanish because the family that adopted her don't speak English, and I don't know Spanish, so now that's a barrier for me. So I always feel like there's a glass in front of me. I'm able to watch her play, I'm able to give her stuff, but she doesn't understand me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Soto. My name is Vanessa Soto. I'm a resident of the Reunification. I used to be in jail. It impacted me and my kids in a big way. It tore us apart. As a mom, dad, and a parent, those out there who love their kids like I do. The impact is heartbreaking. When a real parent is detached from their kids, it hurts, as I am with my 6 sons. I still get up every morning with a smile on my face to do what I have to do, to be with my kids again, yet I am still hurt. The pandemic stopped a lot of parents like me get into programs or classes to do what we had to do to reunite with our families. I know I had previous charges, but I have paid for those crimes. I have never hurt my children. Look at my scars on my face. It is from protecting my kids, not harming them. Social workers should not judge a book by its cover, real talk. We should not shine a light on someone just because of their mistakes, someone's previous cases, or something that they did is not a reflection on them. When I am with my kids, it's amazing. When we bond, it's a good relationship, no matter what. That won't be taken away. The strength and love between the parent and child will be there. My kids mean the world to me. Today, my 7-month-old son, Genocide, is in foster home. But even with our bond, it's not enough. When we do video chats, he gets fussy. He really wants to be with me, so I can hold him. My other kids also say they want to be with me. They tell me they miss me and love me. Genesis is mommy's cutie pie for baby. I get to see him every week. I put my kids first, always. I put my business first. I think about myself last. Kids come first. I spend as much time as I can with him, and I work full time. So I can take care of him and my other kids every time I get to see him. It's exciting and amazing. When I heard about Santa Monica Pier was open again, I decided to take my son there, something I've done with my other sons. He is only 7 months, so I like to smile his hair and play with his hands, feet and toes, and I play ojito with him, so our eyelashes can touch. Being a mother, that part will never go away. I am protective of my kids. I want them to be healthy and not get sick. I really love my kids. I really do. I don't know who cares, but I love my kids. I still care for all my kids, even though they're not with me. I'm doing everything possible to reunite with them. If all my kids were in one room, I'll help them and not let them go. And I'll tell them I love them very much. Their mom is not a person who gives up, but someone that fights.
they see their mom give up, just like I'm not giving up now. My love is pure and strong for them. I will tell them, I'm sorry we have to go through this again. But your mom has never given up. This too shall pass. I have nothing to hide from them. They see me cry, I know I love them. I also want them to have the breath, relax, and grow up. I own up to what I've done in the past, but I want it into something I didn't do. The criminal cases that against me were dropped. I did my time and I was released. The social workers believe what my children say, so why am I allowed to still visit my son? If I was really a threat, wouldn't I still be in jail? My children were in my custody at one point. I completed everything that I was ordered of me. There was nothing else to give me, yet still I am separated from my kids. Once a social worker told me that I don't play around when it comes to my kids. They said who I am on paper is not who I am in real life. Especially around my kids. They say I am always loving, caring, genuine mother that really loves her kids. If I am able to reunite with my sons, the first thing I would do is get a babysitter so I can go to work. Now I work full time because I am focused on taking care of my kids and me. My kids still play a big part in my passion, my music. They're a part of my life, my music. It hurts when I still have to fight for them. I went through hell and back, but I am a mom who doesn't give up. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Before I start, let's give it up for these ladies and gentlemen. Child Protective Services is the major system of intervention when it comes to child abuse and neglect in California. There are many different reasons for the removal of a child from his and her parents today. Thousands of children in California foster care system are placed in temporary out-of-the-home care because of parental neglect, abuse, and exploitation. Unfortunately, the largest percentage of these removals are African Americans and Latino children today. CPA justification, for foster parents are to provide a supportive and stable family for children who do not live with their birth parents until their family problems are resolved. In most cases, foster parents work with social services staff to reunite the child with their parents, but far too much this isn't the case. Hello, my name is Kiana Roberts, and I was once a foster care child. In the month of November in the year of 1990, due to a variety of reasons, my 3 sisters, 2 brothers, and myself were removed from my single mother's home. Sitting in a concrete 4-wall cell, cold, hungry, waiting to be picked up anxiously, my sisters, my brothers, and myself waited there. 3 of my aunts showing up. Many would say we were lucky, but we were because we were separated. I went to live with my aunt, raising me, but me really raising myself. I was consistently told that I would never grow to be anything other than just like my parents. At the age of 18, I was kicked out because the monthly check stopped. Growing up, my mother was disregarded and people often bluntly stated their negative opinions about her in my presence. Growing up, I was abused physically and sometimes even sexually. Growing up, I learned how to lie at an early age because I didn't want the social worker who came to see me to remove me from my aunt's house like she did from my mother. So when the social worker would come, I still remember her name today, Rachel Green. That was my social worker's name. Every month, we would pretend like everything was all right. But the truth is, it wasn't. On the outside, we presented the notion of happiness. We were well-mannered, we were groomed.
and we were well behaved, but internally, my brothers and sisters and I were scorned, we were broken, we were devastated. But most importantly, we were emotionally imbalanced and unstable. Not because we couldn't get that bike for Christmas or that piece of candy from the store, but because we wasn't with our mother. I remember this one time, I was in the 3rd grade, I was 7 years old, and my brother teacher came up to me and she said, Kiana, we were on the water break, and she said, Kiana, I need you to tell your brother to take his hat off. Without me even thinking, I walked up to my brother and I just instantly took his hat off his head. And when I took his hat off his head, he was a 6-year-old boy who like a 60-year-old man because he had plucked out all his hair. And all you see was scalp. And I immediately put his hat back on his head because I didn't want to embarrass him. I can go on and on about the stories and the traumatic events I endured as a child, but what's the point? The importance for me is to explain, due to the disconnect from my mother, the shift, the dynamics it created in my life. The family, there is none. The relationships, there is none. Because of the removal, I never got the opportunity to have that mother-daughter bond with my mother. Up until my mother's death in 2013, I resented her. Unfortunately, not realizing sooner that she was the victim and not the suspect. Not taking into account that she also suffered. Not taking into account that she had suffered from stressful traumatic events in her life. No one took the time to help her. That my mother had lived in a community where the resources were not provided to her like they were provided to me. Not knowing me better, I learned to blame my mother. Not understanding that no bond could be formed because someone took that away from me, and that I was not given a chance to know her, and that I don't know her. Those would be the words that I will often utter from my mouth when people would ask me things about her. Having no relationship with her brought no relationship with my siblings. Ironically, the only thing I did learn from the system was not to feel. Because growing up, someone didn't feel for me. Today, I'm a 38-year-old woman. I'm an MSW graduate. I'm a social worker. Many would say that you're successful, and I would say, okay, true. But sadly, I'm alone. I have no one. I have no parents. I have no mother. I have no father. I have no relationship with my siblings. Because no one took the time to ensure that our well-being and understand that one day we will grow up to be adults. So thank you, DCFS, for everything you have done for me. Thank you for not thinking of me or giving my family a chance. I share this with you today, not for you to feel sorry for me, but importantly to bring awareness. To hope that the next time a social worker or a judge or a lawyer or anyone that is put in place to make decisions, to have compassion. Compassion for the little girl just like me and the fellow social workers that you will promise to give that little girl that's just like me a chance. To think as you are placing these kids in someone else's home, to think that they're not telling these little kids, I love you, you're beautiful, you're worth it, because I once was that little girl. Understand, despite me being a social worker today, I'm not all right. I am confused and I am baffled by the system. I'm baffled by the laws, but most importantly, I'm heartbroken by the marginalization against Black and brown families. I'll leave this with you today. Before you set another policy in place, before you put another law in order, think about the what ifs. What if it was your family? What if it was you? What if you were that little girl like me? So I'm asking for the little girl in me to please make a change.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gloria, and I am a historian and professor at the University of Texas at Austin. I've spent nearly 20 years researching and writing about the history of Black women in incarceration in America and the historical injustices Black women have faced within the criminal legal system for over 150 years. I want to start out by sharing a story with you about a boy named Little Joe. This story comes from a book entitled The Price for Their Pound of Flesh, The Value of the Enslaved, From Womb to Grave, the Building of a Nation. Enslaved people were liquid forms of property, easily converted into cash. As Keckley quickly learned, selling Little Joe, the cook's son, was the solution to the family's financial embarrassment. Without knowing why, his mother was, quote, ordered to dress him up in his Sunday clothes and send him to the house. But what happened next made a lasting impression on Keckley. Little Joe was, quote, placed in the scales and was sold like the hogs at so much per pound. His mother, still unaware of the transaction, had no idea that the price of his pound of flesh covered her enslaver's financial embarrassment. Apparently, the enslaver went to buy hogs for the winter, but had not enough money to cover the cost. Little Joe was stolen from his family so that the enslaver's family could afford food during the cold months. The sale transpired while Little Joe's mother was laboring in the fields, worried about the whereabouts of her son. But the story does not end with Little Joe on the scales and his mother in the fields. Keckley vividly recalled that Little Joe's mother became suspicious when she saw her dressed-up son put on a wagon heading for town. When she inquired, the enslaver assured her that he would return the next day. However, each day he did not return, Little Joe's mother mourned for her child and received whippings for not controlling her grief. Sadly, quote, the mother went down to the grave without ever seeing her child again. Today I'm here to talk about the epidemic of family separation and its historical connections to slavery and its effects on Black women who are disproportionately targeted by the criminal legal system and the child welfare system. Family separation is not a new phenomenon. During the period of slavery, Black mothers and fathers were stripped of their parental rights and relegated to property. State property is what we understand based on what the women have talked about today. But these people were considered property or chattel to be bought and sold, like a car or any other article of property. Black mothers had their babies taken away, sometimes as soon as they gave birth, and Black fathers were denied paternity altogether. Their paternity was not acknowledged by slaveholders because the definition of a family under slavery was mother and child. As a matter of fact, there were laws passed referred to as womb laws. Through these laws, children would inherit the legal status of their mothers. Therefore, children of enslaved mothers were born into slavery as chattel, regardless of the condition of their fathers. Slavery resulted in the dehumanization of Black mothers, who were treated as property, not parents, and their babies were viewed as commodities, not children. Black women's wombs only existed to grow the fortunes of white enslavers. Without them, the system of slavery would have never survived. Under the systems of incarceration that were established to replace slavery, such as convict leasing, and arguably the system of mass incarceration as we understand it today, under these systems, Black women were not allowed to be mothers. Again, their only role was to produce labor after emancipation, this time for private contractors in the state. When Black mothers made desperate attempts to reunite with their children after emancipation, they were judged too poor or, quote, unfit to care for them. In many cases, white women and men, including ex-slaveholders, were granted legal custody of these children and worked them as apprentices until they reached the legal age of adulthood. Legal proceedings were carried out in county courts, or what were called orphan courts, although these children had parents, as they were sometimes called, where judges stripped Black parents of their parental rights and essentially sold their children back into slavery. The courts empowered former slaveholders to take possession of formerly enslaved children in the same way the states take possession of children born to incarcerated and formerly incarcerated mothers today. Although the apprenticeship no longer exists. Its legacy lives on in the day-to-day policies and practices of child welfare, most notably the Federal Adoption and Safe Families Act. This act requires states to automatically file a petition to terminate parental rights after a child has been in foster care for 15 out of 22 months. This means that parents who are incarcerated for more than 15 months will have their parental rights taken away and their kids made eligible for adoption. Because Black women and women of color are more likely to get longer sentences, and because they often lack sufficient funds to pay bail or pay for legal services, they are placed at a greater risk of losing their children. As during the period of slavery, there's a profit being made off of children who are practically sold through this act. States collect money, thousands of dollars for every child that gets adopted out. ASPA essentially generates income for the state the same way slavery generates income for enslavers. The child removal system continues to devastate Black and brown families, and Black motherhood continues to be devalued and viciously undermined and criminalized. Like enslaved mothers, incarcerated and formerly incarcerated mothers are not given a chance to say goodbye to their children, or even hello. They struggle to be reunited with them, and like little Joe's mother, go down to the grave sometimes without ever seeing their children again. I'm calling on everyone in this room with the power to enact or influence legislation to end the child removal system to do it. I'm calling on you to create new policies that don't punish Black and brown mothers for being poor or dressed in the wrong color scheme. I'm calling on you to preserve families and restore the bonds between children and their parents. And I'm calling on you to dismantle the legacy of slavery. Thank you.
Thank you to all of my fellow presenters for sharing your stories and letting your voices be heard. Your lived experiences are invaluable to the change that we hope to see. My name is Annie Mazingo, and I'm an attorney and more racial justice fellow with ANWOL. Our family reunification legal practice brings to light a new community-based model for representing previously incarcerated parents, helping them to restore their relationships with their children. Our team of lawyers represents these parents in family and probate courts to help them regain custody and increase visitation rights. Where their custody rights are challenged, we defend them. When our clients face child welfare and human support actions, we provide pre-petition advocacy, housing, and social services aimed at preventing child detention. We also provide parents with support and advocacy during open dependency court cases, including social work and visitation monitoring, communicating with case participants, and advocating for clients at child or family team meetings. We also advocate for clients at criminal hearings to inform prosecutors and defense attorneys about a client's rehabilitation, as well as their reunification efforts. We are guided by a New Way of Life's advocacy movement, which empowers previously incarcerated individuals to be community leaders. We also are led by Susan Burton, who has taught us to respond to clients' needs in a holistic way and to be unconstrained by conventions, something that she has learned through 20 years of freedom work and through helping to reunite over 400 children with ANWOL residents. With their guidance, we've found ways to help previously incarcerated parents restore their relationships with their children, but it hasn't been easy. We've faced laws that were designed to promote adoptive permanency planning at the expense of parents' civil rights. We've faced systemic bias against Black and Latinx parents. And we've faced the deeply troubling practice of routinely separating justice-involved families without adequate support for reunification, and with the all too likely consequence of permanently losing parental rights. These systemic problems have flown under the radar for too long. It's time to talk about them. Child welfare cases begin with a tip from the community or a referral from police to DCFS. Either way, a social worker will investigate to determine whether the tip is substantiated. Then, the social worker and their supervisor have the discretion on their own authority to make the highly consequential and yet subjective decision to remove a child from their home. This outcome is particularly likely when the case originates from a police referral. Having this degree of discretion gives social workers and police officers flexibility to treat Black and Latinx families differently, even subconsciously. Race plays a big role in child welfare cases arising from incarceration too. Families impacted by incarceration are disproportionately Black and Latinx individuals, who are 84% of LA's jail population, and yet only 54% of LA's general population. These disproportionate incarceration rates lead to higher rates of child detention in Black and Latinx families for a few reasons. For one, child detention can occur when parents lack the family support necessary to arrange for the care of their children while they're serving their sentence. Black parents are more likely than white parents to have suffered the generational trauma of being foster youth themselves, leading to a lack of family network as adults. This puts Black parents at an immediate disadvantage in trying to preserve their relationship with their children while incarcerated. Second, child detention arises when a police officer is making an arrest and does not even let the parent attempt to make arrangements for the care of their children. An opportunity that, based on our observations, appears less likely to be given to Black and Latinx parents. Third, child detention arises when a child welfare agency is already investigating a parent due to a tip and then learns of outstanding criminal charges. We've observed social workers inappropriately refer to expected jail sentences as a reason for immediately detaining a child, even though a different justification is then presented in dependency court. Unfortunately, this inverse concept, guilty until proven innocent, is tearing families apart. Social worker bias, police bias, and disproportionate incarceration rates go far in explaining why in 2020 in LA, 3/4 of children removed from their families were Black or Latinx, and Black children were 5 times more likely than white children to be caught up in child welfare. One way to reduce systemic bias is by giving parents meaningful due process. In other words, notice about what they're facing and a meaningful opportunity to be heard on the subject. This includes ensuring that parents know their rights from the beginning of a child welfare case and have a high-quality legal defense. Social workers respond with confusion and at times animosity when our team of lawyers attend initial DCFS drop-ins. But we found attending these to be highly effective. Our clients should have the right to have us there. Separately, social workers should be required to inform parents of their rights to counsel in this pre-petition phase in a Miranda-type warning during their very first interaction. Social workers often present themselves to parents as friendly and supportive, and yet they bear the burden of proving that a parent is detrimental to their child in dependency court. Social workers should explain to parents that this is their job, because parents who understand this might take a different approach in their interaction with the social worker. Another way to reduce systemic bias is to support incarcerated and previously incarcerated parents in bringing their families back together. What's most troubling about the routine separation of justice-involved families is that their barriers to reunification are unparalleled. One study found that 3 out of 4 parents who serve time will never regain custody of their children. Why? Arranging visitation from jail is challenging, considering the cost of phone calls and mail delays, lack of cooperation from foster parents, and feelings of alienation by children themselves. When a parent is released, this disruptive bond is an obstacle in all three court systems, one that could have been avoided by giving parents a more meaningful right to visitation that includes the support of community-based organizations like ours. Upon release, parents face a whole new slew of barriers to reunification, particularly mothers. One of these barriers is gender pathways to recidivism, which has led the imprisonment of women to skyrocket by 700% in the past quarter century. 80% of the 2.9 million women jailed annually are mothers, and most of these are primary caregivers. 150,000 women jailed annually are pregnant, including 13 women currently at CRDF. Not only are previously incarcerated women disproportionately survivors of violence and trauma, they also are more likely to face futures of homelessness or unemployment. Each of these factors can impact recidivism as well as a mother's chances at family reunification. One particularly unjust circumstance involves a mother who survives the trauma of domestic violence, only to discover that this trauma serves as a barrier to preserving custody. We have clients who tell us, "I never should have called the police," because seeking protection caused her children to be removed through their failure to protect. If a mother won't cooperate into an investigation into her abuser out of fear or PTSD, this too can be used as a reason for parental termination. We have clients who lost their children for that very reason. And it's not just the violence of trauma that perpetuates recidivism. Family separation itself also perpetuates recidivism. The trauma of involuntary family separation increases a mother's feelings of hopelessness, which increases her risk of substance abuse disorder relapse and otherwise regressing in her rehabilitation. A mother's prior family separation also unfairly impacts her right to parent her future children. One social worker informed us that they usually detain a newborn when DCFS has already removed another child from that mother, and that's consistent with what we've seen. It's tragic to have to tell a pregnant mom who, against all odds, has turned her life around, maintained an extended sobriety, and built relationships with her other children, that it is still possible that her baby will be taken. One way we're attempting to overcome these barriers is by working to open our country's first family reunification jail clinic right nearby at CRDF. At this clinic, we will help parents plan a path forward to reunification. Thereafter, we will send an incarcerated parent guardian to serve as a bridge between the incarcerated mother on the one hand and the children, the foster parents, the social worker, and the appointed lawyer on the other hand. This will preserve mother's maternal bonds with her children and ensure that mothers are receiving court-ordered reunification services, legal representation, and notice of appearance. Also through the jail clinic, we will connect with pregnant mothers to advocate for their release to our safe housing, and otherwise to help them make plans for the care of their newborns. We want to thank Supervisor Mitchell's office for supporting our efforts to open this pilot clinic. In order to bring similar clinics to jails and prisons throughout the state, we believe that state legislators would need to mandate that California Sheriff's Department collaborate with community organizations like ours. Finally, we can reduce systemic bias by advocating for fair timelines to reunification that take into account how long it actually takes parents to overcome their barriers to reunification. The hope is to reduce, The hope is to reduce unfair parental terminations arising from arbitrary timelines. California satisfies the Adoption and Safe Families Act 1522 rule by requiring that reunification services be statutorily limited to 12 months, which often is extended to 18 months in a judge's discretion,
but which can be fast-tracked to 6 months for children who enter foster care at 3 or younger. These are political timelines. They're not based on any scientific or even anecdotal evidence of how long it takes parents to overcome their barriers to reunification, such as substance abuse disorders, mental health disorders, and domestic violence. And while we're on the topic of research, wouldn't it make sense to have research comparing the developmental impact of forcible family separation on children to the developmental impact of the various reasons for family separation? Before we subject a family to the most invasive and traumatic outcome possible, long-term or permanent separation, let's make sure it's actually beneficial for the children. The Pritzker Center on Strengthening Children and Families recently issued a report that found that a child faces worse developmental and mental health outcomes from the trauma of being forcibly removed from her parent than the trauma of witnessing domestic violence at home. And yet, you heard today from women who lost their children for that very reason. We are here today to promote family reunification because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for children, it's the right thing for parents, and it's the right thing for reducing systemic bias. The data, historical research, and real-life impact presented today reveal that family separation is a legacy of slavery and mass incarceration. That family separation is a tragic fate that is inescapable for some. It is time to heal families. The generational trauma of family separation will perpetuate until we do. Thank you.
So all I gotta say is, so there's a couple things. There's a quote by Brian Stevenson. He says, each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. I have a t-shirt. I love that t-shirt. You know, I'm honored, I felt honored to participate in the amazing work that Reunification does with our partners. Everybody on the panel, you know, doors, OER, with everybody. I just need to say that. There's supposed to be a Gloria Kingsbury. So we're going to have Gloria say a few words. And then we're going to have public comment. Then we're going to have public comments. Saul Sarabia, the founder and director of Solidarity Consulting, will be facilitating these comments. But here's Gloria Kingsbury.
Hello, my name is Gloria Kingsbury, and I was raised by the out-of-county foster care system. I was taken away from my mother at 2 years old and placed with a foster family. And it was in this home that I experienced some of the worst years of my life. It is the hope that when a child is placed in a foster home that things improve. But in this home, it seemed on the surface like the perfect family. They took me to Disneyland on the weekends and enrolled me in a private Christian school. They also had 2 adult kids who would spend time with me when they were working, which was very often because they were both registered nurses. Like I said, this sounds like a picture perfect family, and it would have been if their son wouldn't have molested me and if my foster parents themselves wouldn't hate me. One of my most vivid memories from this home is when my foster dad grabbed me by my shoulders and shook me. He told me to start crying so he wouldn't have to hit me. This was after my foster home had instructed him to take me to their bedroom and beat. It was always a small mercy when he would hit me instead of her. She never took her rings off and often grabbed whatever item was closest to her. It got to the point where I felt I had to tell someone, and so I told my social worker, who went right to my foster parents and asked if it was true. They denied it, and things got much worse for me after that. It all came to a head when I ran away from school. I had gotten a B on my spelling test, and I was afraid to go home. I didn't make it very far, and my school had found me down the street. They asked me why I ran away, and I told them, not that it mattered because I was still sent home. The last of the time I spent in my first foster home was a blur. I can't remember it no matter how hard I tried. I know now that they had me diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, and then they sent me back to the system saying they didn't want me since I could never truly bond with them. Unsurprisingly, no one wants a 5-year-old with red. I ended up in a group home in what was supposed to be a temporary 30-day situation while I found the alternative placement. But this is where I would spend the majority of my life for the next 13 years. I lived in a 65-bedroom home in a unit with 12 girls within my age bracket. What happens when you have 2 to 3 20-something-year-old staff in charge of 12 abused and traumatized girls, cruelty, and violence? I would like to tell you all about the peer separation room. It was a 4x4 room with carpet floors, walls, and ceilings. There was no access to lights on the inside, and they were seldom clean, at least when I was little. My first experience inside the peer separation room went a little like this. I was 5 years old, and there was blood, vomit, and pee on the walls and the floor, and the staff shoved me inside without the lights on. I was left there for 6 hours. No amount of screaming or crying was enough for them to let me out. I wasn't the only one who had experienced this room. I can remember girls being dragged down the hallway toward the peer separation room, begging for me or anyone to help them to save them from the PSR. There was no stopping it from happening. If I had the time and the strength, I would tell you about the many horror stories my group home has given me, like how they over-medicated us, abused and neglected us, and how they tore us down at every opportunity. I would tell you about the time they threw me a racist birthday party, or when they performed an exorcism on a girl with schizophrenia. Maybe I would tell you about the time I was told to speak a language everyone understands, or when I was told I would never live to see 18. Maybe I would tell you that it took me 2 years for them to tell me that my biological mother had died, and that my CSW had kept my biological family that was living from me because she didn't think it was relevant. I would tell you so much more if only I was free. The last thing I want to talk about is my time in transitional housing for foster children. I feel that I have shared enough with you all that I can be a bit blunt and to the point. I hope that you will excuse me, but I'm overwhelmed, and if I am not direct, I fear I will never get it out. At 18, I was accepted into a transitional housing program. My roommate was a party girl and often invited other people into our apartment. I reported her, and there were times where I even contacted the police. Drugs and alcohol were everywhere in our apartment. Nothing was ever done about it. One night, my roommate let in a friend, and the two of them drugged me and then raped me and filmed it. This was my breaking point. But when I went to the director of the transitional housing program, they moved me to another city without any of my belongings and left me there for months before I had nothing left. That was when I was 19. I am now 23, and I am only here now because I got lucky. There are a lot of people that I love and knew growing up who did not get this far. And more than anything, there is a desperation to get it out, to get someone to do something about it, because like one of the speakers before us, it is still happening. I am 23. I have PTSD, depression, and anxiety. I'm on medication for each, and I went from over-medicated at a group home to depending on it now to stay alive. That's it.
In
morning, buenos dias. My name is Saul Sarabia. In 1999, I had the distinct pleasure as a young community organizer to meet a woman named Susan Burton, who came to the community coalition where I was working to learn how an everyday person gets involved in changing laws and making laws that are already on paper real for people that don't have money to hire lawyers to vindicate their legal rights. We went on a more than 20-year journey now, beginning with a campaign called Family Care, Not Foster Care. Our mission in that campaign was to have the county decision makers realize that if the vast majority of children were with relative caregivers, like poor grandmothers in South LA, then that's where the vast majority of the resources should be to support these children and not with group homes. In doing that work, most of those grandmothers said to us, I do not want to become the adoptive parent of my grandchild. I have hope that my daughter will be treated for addiction, will come out of incarceration and get her children back. And our goal always was to look at how to reform the family destruction machine that was described so eloquently, not just by the folks here who have lived through it directly, and I want to thank them for doing that, but also to create a situation where what you're seeing happening today becomes the norm for community-based public policy making, and that is that the people in power are not up here talking at you, they're down there listening to folks who've lived through this, and that in Susan's vision, that should be the point of departure for us to work together to shift the way that systems work. And we want to thank you for being here to be part of that on an issue that has been a long time coming to overturn and change the damaging, harmful systems that were put in place in the 1990s. We cannot do it without you, and thank you for being here. What we do next is we are actually going to ask those of you who have heard these reflections today some of the ideas for systemic change that you've heard from the legal department, which we also had a dream at Susan's as she was building her organization back in the 90s that she would have a legal department that would get to not just represent individual families, but do it in a way that got at what is the root cause of why this legal problem exists. That's why we're here today. We're talking directly to public policy makers, talking directly to each other. And so as part of that process, we will, in a minute, take all of these reflections and dialogue with the systems leaders about what they think some of the challenges are that can be removed to do what folks in this room are saying needs to get done. And before we go into that conversation, we want to give you an opportunity to share your thoughts. So we have a couple microphones set up, but we'd like to now hear public comment. If you could be brief with your comments so we can hear with as many folks as possible. There are a couple ways to do that. There was going to be a microphone up here. Okay, we have a mic over here with Robert, so if you want to come towards Robert or raise your hand, we'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the ideas you've already heard, any of the reflections on the experiences of folks that have shared here today that resonate with your own or your own family members, and that lead you to think about things that people in power should be doing to change the system now. I see a hand here.
Hi, everybody doing? My name is Renisha Hubbard. I'm a mother of 3 children, and I have been having a DCFS case for nearly 5 years in Monterey Park due to Lado's ineffective assistance of counsel. The court has sustained a false, uncontested marijuana abuse allegation made up by the social workers. I was never advised my rights to cross-examine the CSW, but by the court and the lawyers had no knowledge of said rights. I never waived any rights. I never was afforded any opportunity to cross-examine a social worker. And CSW, in violation of my rights under CRC 5.674 to cross-examine a CSW who prepared each report, filed to the court. The lawyer also breached his duty under WIC 317E by failing to cross-examine the CSW. at the jurisdiction in a dispositional hearing. And as stated above, I've never waived my rights, and I never waived any rights to cross-examine the CSW who filed these false petitions. I am also going up against the police. The DA has failed me. I have filed a restraining order because my son's father strangled me while my son was in my home. And the commissioner, Stephen Marpet, told me that it was okay to get strangled. And I have to deal with my abuser. And there's nothing that I can do but hand my baby over to a man that strangled me. And I'm being railroaded. I done had 2 kids already. My older kids are in legal guardianship with my sister. I just had a baby February the 13th, 2021. They tried to come to the hospital and steal my baby. I had to call 2 lawyers up there to come and get me out. If I didn't, they were going to steal my baby. My baby is 9 months, and DCFS is still in my life. They don't have no evidence. They can't produce no evidence. They're talking about 5 years ago. I've done everything. I've done 12 classes, parenting classes, anger management, everything that you can imagine. I've done it, and I'm still doing it. So what I did was, I checked in LA Trade Tech to become a paralegal because I am tired of being railroaded. And there's many other parents that I know, that I have met going through the same walk. And these social workers are not hearing us. They're just walking over us. The attorney told me because of federal funding, that's why they don't want to give my kids back. They don't want to send my son home because of federal funding. They are traumatizing these kids, all because of federal funding. And I was told by my lawyer that I will never win in Monterey Park, no matter how good I do. So I asked them, provide me a medical professional, a documentation stating that I am a substance abuser. Can you provide me that? That's in the DSM 5th edition, assessing alcohol and drug abuse. She said, no, I can't provide you that. Where's the evidence against me? Even a criminal has the right to cross-examine their accuser. No one's listening to me. I'm not crazy. This is going on around the world, and it needs to stop. I have a little 9-month-old baby right now that I can't FaceTime because it's not a court order. But then it's a court order. But then it's not a court order. So basically, they're turning us in circles and stealing our kids. And if I have another kid, they're coming for that kid too. Thank you guys for listening to me. I appreciate you guys. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm a person with lived experience, and I just listened to everyone's story here and very common and relate to it on so many levels. And I would like to call on legislators and leaders to ask for FBI investigation on DCFS and corruption that we hear so regularly. And that's the only comment I have today.
Thank you. And I hand over here on this corner after that.
My name is Sandra, and I'm a service provider, and I want to thank for the invitation to be here today. I'm the program manager for a pregnant and parenting wellness program, and I'm a working recovery with 34 years being sober. I'm a woman who has taken DCF kids and had them come take my newborn from me at the hospital. And being able to be a part of the summit is an honor. It gives me a different way to look at the situations that I deal with at work every day. It gives me a different vantage point. And for that, I'm grateful. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for sharing your stories. And thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. Another hand over here, brother. The far corner.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gloria Kingsbury. I'm an advocate and a life experience survivor. This is twofold for me. I lost my kids by the system coming in by a tip. And then they didn't just take my kids based on domestic violence. They gave the kids to my abuser, which was my mother. So not only was I traumatized, but then my kids were traumatized, and I see it today, and I want to tell you a really brief story in that. My daughter, who is now 32 years old, I have her mental health dog, and it's been coming up with my dog. And when it was time for her to take her dog, I told her, you might as well take my dog, because now they're both, they're really close, right? And my daughter was like, no, it'll be fine. I said, no, you cannot separate them. They've been together for 2 years. My daughter said they separated me when I was in Orangewood from my sister and my brother, and they didn't even care. She's 32 years old and still suffering from the trauma from when she was 6. This is what's serious to me, is that I can look around this room and I can see some people engaged, and I can see some people that really care, and some people that's just like, yeah. But these are people's lives that we're dealing with. And so my solution to them, because Orangewood has literally affected my kids so deeply, is that compassion fatigue is real. So the people that work in these services, you guys need mental health services as well. You guys are so busy assessing us, we should be assessing you. We should be the system should be making sure that you are capable and have the capacity to do the job that you're doing, because you go home at night and then you sit down in front of the television and you deal with your children, and I'm sure your children are suffering as well, because I see social workers whose kids are dysfunctional, just like the kids that I see coming up in the system that I'm working in. So assessment, mental health services, and also evaluations. You have to take an evaluation to be a police officer, a behavioral evaluation. Your behavioral evaluation should also be for people that are in the CPS or CFS system, but for a more holistic standpoint. So that's what I wanted to say. This thing is trickling down. I left California to go to Virginia because my granddaughter was born, and I saw her about to go through the same exact thing that my daughter had went through, that I had gone through, and I didn't want that generational curse to follow another way. And now they're stable, but I'm doing the work. So what work are y'all gonna do? And I'd like to hear from you guys on that.
Thank you for that. So we are going to hear, after there's dialogue, the purpose of today is to get all this information out there and to continue to talk to each other as we problem solve this at the county level, but also the state, which is the one that sends the federal funds to the county. That is not something we're going to complete doing in one morning or one day. I want to say that it is not an accident that this conversation about how to undo and repair the harms of the systemic failures that were put into place in the 90s is happening with decision makers who are grounded in and representing South Los Angeles, because this is a community that was disproportionately impacted by the failed policies of the war on drugs. I am thankful that my entry point, not just having lived through the experience of being a relative caregiver to my own cousin, but from a public policy making perspective to this work, was as an organizer trained here in South LA by somebody who eventually went on to represent us in the Assembly and in Congress, Congresswoman Karen Bass. But what I learned from Karen is that everything she had to go and do and undo in Sacramento and DC had to be informed by the voices of people like all of you in this room, or it didn't matter. It does not matter if the people that are directly impacted aren't the ones informing what the decision makers are doing. And so for that, you and I both know that the real work comes out of talking to each other today. There are organizations here, besides all of us or not. I see the shirts from Homies Unidos. I see other directly impacted people who have organized to come together and to be partners to the systems leaders so that we can actually begin to move to the solutions that we need to be put in place. And so the purpose of our time here today is to give you an idea of who they are. You heard from the senator who's still here with us today. You've heard from other folks who have directly experienced this. And what we're going to do is continue that dialogue throughout today, and then we're going to come back and hear where things landed today. And then I invite you, I implore you to stay involved with the organizers at A New Way of Life, to stay involved with the organizations that brought you here today. If you're a service provider, we need your voice. If you're somebody who's worked in government, we need your voice. But we need folks that are directly impacted to be driving that dialogue with us. One of the other folks that has been on this trajectory of being directly working with the families impacted by these issues in the nonprofit sector and then deciding herself to become a public servant is our supervisor from this area, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and I want to thank her for being here and invite her to share her thoughts with you as well today.
I just told the senator, how about that for time? So the bad thing about transitioning from staff to elected member is I don't have control of my own time. I don't get to always be where I want to be. Now, it's not to say that I didn't want to be at Alpharetta College with the veterans this morning. I wanted to be there too. But I just don't have control of my time. And that's the irritating thing about being like this. Because this is the kind of space I would have been all day. So I'm sorry I'm going to stay over far. I see lots of familiar faces. And it's great to be here. I started my day with Susan Burton on my phone, who said, "Do you have an iPhone? Yes, I'm a FaceTime." I said, "Susan, I still have on my sleep bottle. It's 6:30. So you all should have paid money to see me in my sleep bonnet. And Susan Burton showed me her bruises and her leg. And I said, Susan, you have built an organization and they got this. And I know you all have this and you have her. And then I told her with great love, and one monkey don't stop no show. So we will continue the work, and you stop and take care of yourself. We're going to help her do that. So I have two of my really smarter than me, amazing team members here who heard your stories. And I picked up the wrong packet in the car. Can you tell them discombobulated? Who told me about the panel presentation that they heard. And they said, Supervisor, there's a lot of realness and a lot of emotion and a lot of pain. And I said, I know. And I said, that's why we are here. To hear you, and to talk about what we do in our space to affect some structural change. I see myself not only as a county, but also when I was the state legislature as an agent of government. That's what I am. And I have chosen that for myself to bring my ordinary life experience and your ordinary life experiences to the front of the conversation. Sometimes I have felt in the community I come from that that's not always been the case. But that is why A New Way of Life, that is why Senator Kamlager, that's why the Assemblyman and I are here, because we are a reflection of your experience. So I want you to know that we get it and we are here for you. Thank you. So I heard things like, we won't ever stop fighting until we see our children. That there's a desperation to do something about this, that can you help me change this system? And they are traumatizing our kids. And let me say that as an agent of government, at no point do I or any of us in the county wake up with the vision that we are going to continually traumatize somebody. We also are clear that there are systems in place that have been in place for decades that may not be in our collective or individual best interest. So I'm not denying anybody of that. And so what we have to do is work with partnership, not only on a case-by-case basis, but to use your individual life experiences to help inform what policies and systems should and must be like. You know, the foster care system, when my mother was a caseworker in South LA in the late 50s, early 60s, is a different system. The system is serving a different population. And so we have to acknowledge that. And it is up to the department and social workers and all of us to acknowledge that and come to that space, but it is a different population, different case of circumstance. What are we going to do differently? We can't bring a 19th century child welfare services system to 21st century problems and family families. We can't do that. So the first thing is we have to acknowledge that. And then we have to go over our to work. And then we'll be slower than we like. And there will be some people who make it up in our effort to find progress. And that's just the reality. As a policymaker, I'm not going to be able to fix it for everybody. I'm not. But what we are going to do is try to not make the mistakes that we have been making over and over again. What we are going to do is to acknowledge that implicit and explicit bias is rampant in all government systems. And we're going to call it out. We are going to acknowledge that we are going to decriminalize poverty. And we are not going to continue to act like that. And that is a reflection in your life experience, that's a reflection in my life experience, that's a reflection in our family, friends, and neighbors who are still locked up, who are unhoused, who are not being seen and heard or cared for in a humane, meaningful way by their government. Because the government will do where that death or not, it is. It's all of us. So I'm really proud of our partnership, our relationship. I applaud the good senator for convening this. And please know that we will work together. We have moved some pretty badass motions in our first year in the Board of Supervisors. Staff over there, they can pop in their college. I see that. We have done things like talk about blind rules. And that's hard. And that's hard because social workers don't really believe they have implicit bias. None of us do. And guess what? We all do, including yours too. So if I'm going to acknowledge that, I'm certainly going to expect other people to acknowledge it too. We have bias. And so the issue is to acknowledge that and for us all to educate ourselves and work beyond it and do it. Let's just tell it. So I'm proud of the work that we do on blind rule. I'm looking forward to the outcome of what we learned about those studies. Proud to be working with a new way of life on a motion that I will foreshadow a bit with regard to family reunification clinics. Years ago, when I was in Sacramento, young staff before I ran for office, I was on the board of the Berkeley Project. We had a pilot project in the Sacramento County Jail where women were paired with incarcerated women who were present. And our whole job was to connect them to resources upon their needs. And we were sister friends. We were partners with a woman, so when she was released, my job to make sure she made her appointments, whatever I need to do. Sister friend, not your neighbor, not mentor, but your sister friend. The sister will talk to you a little different way than the mentor will. The sister will tell you, if one is together, you need to get there. You know what I mean? It's just a different kind of relationship. Overwhelming success. Birth outcomes were You know, and it's not rocket science. People need to be connected to resources when they're most vulnerable. And you can't release me on a Monday and expect me to have it all figured out by myself on Wednesday. But if we foster relationships and form relationships with the women who are in jail upon their release, we already had a plan. We had a birth plan. She had a relationship with someone in the community that when she hit a snag, somebody to call. We all need that. I have people I need to call today. We all need that in our lives, right? And so we're hoping that through this motion of family reunification, that we can work from while they are still incarcerated to start the slow progress of government, to start the ball rolling. We're looking forward to, we're continuing to work on those details, we're working in partnership with the way of life, but that's something that I'm excited about. We have authored a number of motions addressing mental illness. We've authored a motion for sustainable funding to the Office of Diversion and Reentry. We are trying to come at these systems and these challenges from a real organic place, recognizing that all people who are systems touched are touched by multiple systems. And so we are not coming in with blind on. The government likes to think in silos. Oh, I do public health. Don't talk to me about mental health or legal care. Or I do housing. Don't talk to me about mental health or legal care. That's not how we do this people. Most people are systems touched by multiple systems. So we are really trying to pull back those historic, siloed way of thinking to approach it from a humanist perspective and try to spread ourselves as thin as possible. Right, gentlemen, look at my staff. That's why I hired people younger than me, because they have energy. That included you, Senator. Have the energy to go out and make it happen. And so we are looking at this from a systems perspective about how we can impact all of the residents of the second district in the most meaningful and profound way. What makes me dangerous is I don't take no real comfortably, A. B, I'm new, so I can say, oh, I'm new, I didn't know we could do that. And bat my eyelashes at it, and I'm like, I can't do that. Well, it's too late, we've already done it. And the other thing that makes me dangerous is my 10 years in the state legislature, knowing that system too. So I know who to call. I call Brian, or I call Caroline, and say, we need some money from the state of California, go get it. And I'm going to step up and match the county money, so we can affect some real meaningful change. Because the reality is, we have end dates. Like your milk, buy the milk carton milk, and you know it's going to be bad by such and so day. I got 11 more years. He has X number of years. He has a limited amount of time. So we are coming out of the chute running at top speed to create as much culture change as we possibly can. To convene a Peace and Justice Summit, to gather all of you in the space, not just for you to talk to us, but for you also to talk to each other and inform one another. All of us have the opportunity to learn experience. I hope everybody in the panel learns something from somebody else's panel. Because nobody here is an expert in all. I am thrilled to see my director here and spending time hearing directly from you. Because see, sometimes you all walk around with low attitude for us because we don't know. Well, guess what? We are public servants, but we don't know what you tell us. And in these kinds of gatherings, these are constructive, healthy ways for us to cross fertilize, for you to see the director, to have someone you've never seen before in your life, for you to see the supervisor, for you to be heard and tell your story, and vice versa. Because it's important for you to understand our limitations, and it's important for us to understand how our limitations are causing your family harm. And how we need to be motivated to think differently and break out of our silos, and how hard that is. And before running for public office, I would have never thought I would be considered an incrementalist, but sometimes you have to take things in stages that still makes me crazy, but sometimes that sometimes it might not happen in our life. But if we can start the ball rolling, form the connections, have a deeper, better understanding of what government should and must be to serve the residents of LA County today, we have made good progress. Any questions? I have no idea what the program is, so she may come take mine. But any questions you have of me before I take my seat? Any questions you have of me? I've seen some head nodding, I've seen some like, I'm not really sure what it's about, what you said it's about. I appreciate that. But this is an opportunity for a question for me. Yes. Oh, question back. Okay, I see you. Area code 213. She asked my contact number. I think she thinks I'm not going to do it for a while. Area code 213-974. Go ahead, Sonia. Sonia, enter the card before I get the number out. 213-974-2222. Holly J. Mitchell at BOS as the Board of Supervisors at LACounty.gov. Polka dots, yes. So I appreciate that. I'm glad you said that. I appreciate that, but it makes me a little nervous when people thank me for doing what I'm supposed to do. So I appreciate it, but that's what I'm supposed to do. So I'm glad you raised that. I want us all to be really thoughtful about our language. Because reimagining public safety, we've got all this inclusiveness out there. And everyone wrote down what they thought that meant. We would have 500 different answers, right? So I want us to be really thoughtful and strategic about our language. Because to reimagine can go in any kind of different direction. We can reimagine a more punitive system. And there are some who will perhaps suggest that that is done. So I just hope that in a space like this, and I can see your beautiful wall art back there, but I want people to, let's be thoughtful about our language. Maybe we need to add a second sentence. I see compassion red. We need to reimagine a child welfare system that is centered around compassion. Let's be clear so when we say the term, Stevie Wonder knows what it means. You know what I mean? Because if you think about, just some of these catchphrases that have picked up in recent years that have become a part of our lexicon, and depending upon who you talk to, we don't really know where they're coming from. So if you can just let's add a second sentence or a second phrase so we can direct your reimagining going this way. We're not talking about that. We're going this way. Fair enough? I thought about that yesterday, but it wasn't the time for me to say all that. So I'm glad you said it, like I'm saying today, to a group who will do that. You are the group to add the second sentence or phrase about what it means to reimagine the child welfare service system. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Wonderful. Yes. increasingly, when my mother had a caseload in South LA in the late 50s, early 60s, that was the case. And so it's, and either it's implicit or explicit bias, either it's intentional or it's ignorance, but the reality is they cross it. And that's not new. No, I agree, and when I opened by talking about decriminalizing poverty, that's what I meant. I am so proud to be in the position that I am today to bring forward to LA County the largest guaranteed basic income pilot that the country will see. And we are having conversations, and it is creating for me the opportunity to have conversations about not just this pilot, not just guaranteed basic income, but how we can create culture shift, as I said that repeatedly already, around all of our programs. Nothing frustrated me more than when I was the CEO of Crystal Stairs and someone would call me and say, so I got a promotion, let's celebrate. I'm going to make X number of cents more an hour, but it's going to drop me off the cliff for my eligibility for my child care. What do I do? And I would close my office door and say, don't accept the promotion. And how heartbreaking that was. But when we looked at the value of her child care subsidy versus the money she was getting that promotion, it didn't add up to dollars and cents. When we in the legislature, I wasn't there yet, said, basically reverse the premise of welfare reform and said for your first 2 years, stay home because it's cheaper for us to pay CalWORKers to pay for your child care. What kind of start and stop message did that send? First, we told you that you was trifling and lazy to be on CalWORKers and take you out to work. That thank you, Bill Clinton was president. And then several years later, we reversed ourselves. And people who were midway through training programs were like, I had to stop. Like, what am I doing? Sitting in the legislature and have members come up and try to tell me that, the car asset test was worthwhile because people told them that there were women on CalWORKers driving Cadillacs. The quarterly reports, all of the things the government has done to tell you that we're going to give you this entitlement, but we really don't believe that you're worthy, so we're going to make you jump through hoop after hoop after hoop after hoop to get something that we are calling entitlement. That's a lie. So to have this opportunity to create this culture shift, to acknowledge that everyone needs a guaranteed basic income to survive. How do we create a sense of equality in our socioeconomic system to allow that? My secret hope, don't tell anybody, is that then that will help us break the federal ties around the entitlement program. That once we have enough pilots and enough evidence to show that if I give you an extra $1,000 a month, you will use it to invest in yourself and your baby, just like any other mother does, regardless of where she is on the social media. So once we prove that, and we can hopefully break free of the welfare queen trope, that we can re-envision the ways in which the government supports all people. We don't think about Social Security that way. We don't think about Medicare that way. The child tax, the earned income tax credit, those are ways in which we can give that. But in the legislature, when our colleague was trying to get the diaper program passed, we have legislators say, I'll give her a diaper, but I don't give her any more money. Why? Why? What do you think she's going to do with that money any differently than your wife? What makes you think she wants to do less for her child than you want for your wife? So we are going to create a paradigm shift around poverty. We are going to acknowledge that people aren't at fault for being poor, being born black or brown, or an immigrant, or whatever people perceive that makes them think that we are less than. We are going to work to call that out, to name it, and change it. So, for my 57th birthday in in September, I got a tattoo. So I'm late, it's all right. And my tattoo on my arm says courage. Courage. And so that is my reminder to myself and others that we have a responsibility and an obligation to live, govern, lead organizations, lead departments with courage each and every day. And if you choose not to, if you choose not to go big and deliver services like that to people, then get out of my way.
Supervisor Mitchell, because you brought up the decriminalizing poverty, I got another quote for you. So another quote from Brian Stevenson that the opposite of poverty is not wealth, the opposite of poverty is justice. So we are taking a break now to enjoy the lunch buffet. To your left, my right. Tables will be directed to the buffet row by row. So please watch our staff and we'll let you know when it is your time. Thank you. No, what did Brian say? Robert said, line up. Robert.